most of the Bible is God's instructions to man, but the Psalms, one of the purposes is you see men like David, men like Asaph, Solomon, who they're pouring out their heart to God. And I think it's just as profitable for us to see these men who we call heroes of the faith, to see that they struggle. And we can see how they approached God's throne and still relied on his strength and had faith in him.
I think that's cool too, because I remember one time I was talking with a young guy who had done something he shouldn't do. And he said, well, David did this, and David was a man after God's own heart. I said, no, hold on, wait a minute. Yes, David was a man after God's own heart. He wasn't a man after God's own heart in the midst of that sin that we're discussing.
Yes.
But David was a man after God's own heart. And when you look at the Psalms, and like you said, they're not all written by David, but a lot of them are. I think it's comforting for me to see that a man who was after God's own heart, he also struggled with a lot of these things.
Right.
Because then we look back and we don't think like, oh, well, if I'm struggling with anxiety, I'm just a weak person, like. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Authentic Christian Podcast. I'm Aaron, this is Cole, and today we have a special guest, Brandon Blackwell. Brandon, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so in this episode, we're going to be talking about, we're going to have a two-part episode. Each one is going to cover 5 Psalms to calm anxiety. I went to Polishing the Pulpit in July in Branson, Missouri, and I didn't get to go to a lot of lessons, but one of the ones I wanted to go to was Brandon's, and so I went to hear Brandon's lessons. And one of the ones he had was talking about Psalms that can help you with anxiety and how to calm it. And I was like scribbling furiously. Like it was only a 30-minute lesson, but Brandon covered so much in that I remember thinking, I want to do this on the podcast. And so last week I texted Brandon. We had to sort of film some episodes quickly. Scott wasn't able to be with us, but Brandon, I said, hey, can you film like Monday? And he said, I can. And I texted Cole, said, can you drive over Sunday night? And he said, I can. And so we're going to do an episode. The first one, we're going to talk about 5 different Psalms to calm anxieties. And this came from a lesson that Brandon did. And so we're kind of going to let Brandon, hopefully Brandon will do most of the talking. We'll chime in a little bit. But Brandon, so when you're studying for a lesson like this, like what for after studying it, what are some of the things, like how would you describe anxiety? Why is anxiety a problem that Christians need to study?
I think it's one of those things that everyone struggles with.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I taught this lesson at PTP, I started off by saying, by a show of hands, how many in here have ever struggled with anxiety, depression? And of course, everybody's hands went up. And that was the point. It's something we already know, but the point is you're not weird. You're not strange for feeling this way. But it's important from the standpoint that I heard somebody preach a sermon one time, and the topic was discouragement, closely related.
Mm-hmm.
But they talked about the fact that discouragement, it can diminish our confidence. It can hurt us emotionally. It can sap our enthusiasm. And so apply all of those things to anxiety because it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the Christian life, it's a life of joy, rejoice in the Lord evermore. Again, I say rejoice. And so when we have these emotions, which are not inherently wrong, sometimes what happens is we let them get the best of us. And so we have to make sure we govern this and go to God's word, because the message of the Lord is to be of good cheer, Matthew 14:27. And so the whole point is, what can we do? What can we take from God's word to overcome these emotions, to govern them and be who God would have us to be?
I mean, I think it's a great approach because, I think about anxiety and I do know there are times in my life when I had so much going on that it did drain me emotionally. I was just so worn out mentally, maybe not physically, that I just didn't want to do anything, And of course, for me, we'll get into this. I remember for me, it was like, okay, just take a nap or eat something, like God
Right.
told Elijah in 1 Kings 18. But it can consume your thoughts. And I've talked to people who, when they lay down at night, everything from their day, all their problems rush through, their mind, and they really they don't have this peace. And so I think that the Psalms are one of those books that I actually heard Justin Rogers do a lesson on the Psalms once. And Justin said that a lot of people say that the Psalms were the hymn book of the Old Testament. And then he actually said that Justin Rogers said, and Justin has his PhD in Hebrew, he knows it from, I don't know if it would call Hebrew Union or something. It's a good school. So he said, even though people say that, and even though big Bible dictionaries and resources say it, he said he's never seen a primary resource, a Jewish resource that says that's actually what it was used for. He says that
Right.
all of the Jewish resources say that the Psalms were looked at as we would look at the book of Matthew, Mark, or Luke, of this. They're full of just doctrinal, really strong doctrinal teaching.
Right.
And so I'm excited to go through the Psalms because I think sometimes the Psalms get overlooked. And I know one friend that really didn't study the Psalms and a lot of times people don't study the Psalms until they start going through something that's really bothering them, like stress or anxiety or an awful situation where they're betrayed. And then you go and you realize, like, wow, the Psalms have so much information that's relevant. And, you know, I'm sure all of us, like you said, you asked for raising of hands, have experienced times in their lives where they felt anxious or discouraged, you know. And so I think it's a good point. What you said, that all people struggle with this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember in your lesson you talked about, what was the song you talked about? It was like a Billboard, like a really popular song.
Yeah, it's the song's just called Anxiety. I think it came out maybe in March of this year. It was earlier in this year, but it's one of the top songs of the year. And I mean, it's just, I think it somewhat shows us this is something that people deal with.
Yeah.
It's something that's relatable.
Yeah.
So
I think I can't remember whose lesson it was. For some reason, Glenn Colley is coming to mind, but somebody was talking about the Psalms and they pointed out something that was interesting. And I was studying through them and I was like, wow, that is kind of interesting. Most of the Bible contains information from God to man.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Psalms are recorded from the standpoint of people talking to God specifically. And I think that's a neat thing about this idea of discouragement or anxiety, is that we have this avenue of prayer. We have this avenue to which we can talk to God. Just like all the Psalms we'll read today, we can still do that. Like, that door isn't closed in the 21st century. It's not like God's like, well, I'm not listening anymore. No, he still is. So I think that was kind of an interesting point that was drawn out from this.
And that's one of the things I brought out in the lesson when I was introducing it.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about the unique feature. And, you know, I talked about the acronym people have given for Bible, BIBLE, basic instructions before leaving earth. And so I made that point, you know, most of the Bible is God's instructions to man, but the Psalms, one of the purposes is you see men like David, men like Asaph, Solomon, who they're pouring out their heart to God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just as profitable for us to see these men who we call heroes of the faith, to see that they struggle. And we can see how they approached God's throne and still relied on his strength and had faith in him.
I think that's cool too, because I remember one time I was talking with a young guy who had done something he shouldn't do. And he said, well, David did this, and David was a man after God's own heart. I said, no, hold on, wait a minute. Yes, David was a man after God's own heart. He wasn't a man after God's own heart in the midst of that sin that we're discussing.
Yeah. Yes.
But David was a man after God's own heart. And when you look at the Psalms, and like you said, they're not all written by David, but a lot of them are. I think it's comforting for me to see that a man who was after God's own heart, he also struggled with a lot of these things.
Right.
Because then we look back and we don't think like, oh, well, if I'm struggling with anxiety, I'm just a weak person. You know, like, I think sometimes there is this image of like masculinity, which is just like, look, suck it up and rub some dirt on it. Don't complain. And it's like, well, no, there are things that you're struggling with mentally. God created man.
Right.
So if God sought to put these types of things in the scriptures for man that he created, and you brought this in your lesson, Romans 15:4, the things written before time are written for our learning. So if God puts this in the Old Testament, something that he records how David and other men, like Asaph, felt, like it's there for a purpose. And I think that's so that we can realize, whether it's men or women, grown men or young men, old women, everybody can realize, look, there's something in the Psalms that you can take away from this. So, all right. So Brandon, in this lesson, we're going to cover 5 Psalms. I think we're going to do 5. Maybe it's 3 hours long, but so what is the first Psalm that you talked about in your lesson?
So the first Psalm is Psalm 3.
Okay.
And I titled this one, Psalm 3, when it feels like everyone's against you.
Mm-hmm.
And so Psalm 3, this is the first Psalm that we have with an inscription.
Okay.
And so some people have said, you know, Psalm 1 is instructional. Psalm 2 is prophetic, messianic. Psalm 3 is really the first devotional Psalm that we have.
Awesome.
And it's the first one here with an inscription. And so it, of course, says in Psalm 3 that it is a Psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, his son.
Hmm.
Now, I think that historical context is very significant because if you know your Old Testament history, of course, Absalom, the son of David, he's leading this rebellion against David. And so you can obviously just imagine the restless nights, the anxiety that could be caused from that. And so the question has to be is, what did David do? Where did David turn? And I also think it's significant because, again, I said Psalm 3, when it feels like everyone's against you, not simply just when you feel alone.
Yeah.
And I think that could apply. You could still make application for when you feel lonely, but this is a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to feel alone, But it's a whole nother level of loneliness when you feel like people are actively working against you.
And you're a kid, man.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm getting a little emotional just thinking about that. Like, I'm thinking about my boys. Like, it's one thing when someone who's not a member of your family betrays you.
Mhm.
You're like, okay, he's just looking out for his own interest. I'm not family to him. Like, I can see how he could go to sleep at night, like betraying me or speaking badly of me. And then I think of like people in my life, like family. Like, well, like it should be this way, spiritual family, but I'm just going to say sometimes it isn't, but it should be.
Yeah.
But like, I think of physical family. I'm like, what would it be like for my boy to like not just say something bad about me or like lie to me, but my boy leads a rebellion to take my position and basically kick me out.
Right.
So like, I mean, most of the time, whatever situations we're dealing with, it's like, look, I'm not going to state all scenarios, but I find it hard to think of a scenario that would be as devastating to this when your boy that you raised and took care of tries to like stab you in the back, you know?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me. I was studying a little bit of like Marshall Keeble and his story,
Yeah.
and what an incredible guy, great preacher. But
I don't know much about his story.
Well,
I just know he's a great preacher.
Yeah, his dad was actually born into slavery, and so like Marshall Keeble grew up in like a pretty difficult time period.
Yeah.
But later in his life, he debated his dad publicly.
Really?
His dad took an opposite stance against truth, and he had to call his own father out against that. And it kind of, whenever you did your sermon, that's what it kind of reminded me of, just in the inverse of like, you're having to take how alone would you feel? How discouraged would you feel to have to fight against your own family, your own blood, and they're standing against you?
Yeah.
And so it brought back to mind as you were going through this, just people that have had to do that in life. David is one of them, and I think it's great to learn from that as well.
Right.
That's cool,
Yeah,
man.
I think so. And so here, of course, David is. So my question after, with that in place, that context, what does David do?
Yeah.
And so you see, I like to take notes in my Bible. So for the outline, I can't remember where I got this outline, but I think it fits great for this chapter. You have his trials, verses 1 and 2, his trust, verses 4 through 6, and then his trials in 5 through 8.
Okay.
So David, what are your trials? Verses 1 and 2. He says, Lord, how they have increased who trouble me.
Mm.
And so here David is, the number he feels like is rising. He says, many, that's not few, many are they who rise up against me. Notice again, if you take notes in your Bible, circle these words. Many are they who say of me, there's no help for him in God. And so he feels like his enemies are rising. He feels like they're increasing. There's a lot of them, and they're mocking him. They're saying, David, you have no help from God. And so David, what's the answer? What do you do? And that's when you go from his trust, or his trials rather, to his trust in God. And I love this. If you take notes in your Bible, circle these first two words. It says, but you, O Lord, are a shield for me.
Mm.
And so you move from immediately his trials to his trust.
In verse 2, they say there is no help for him in God. So it's almost like even these people who are rising up against him, like they're people that believe in God, and they're saying, God's not going to help you. But he's trusts in God, and he says, you're a shield. I have written in my Bible after that line, safety and protection.
Right.
You know, a shield. My glory and the one who lifts up my head. I think maybe most of my notes are from your lesson. So like, I'm not trying to get this, but I have written in my Bible, like, pick your head up. Did you make an analogy to that in that lesson about like somebody who says like, hey, keep your head up or something like that?
I don't remember saying that.
I don't remember
but
either.
I'll take credit for it.
There you go. So Brandon, most likely, and if it wasn't Brandon, he triggered the thought, because almost all my notes in there, they're in a certain type of pen, which I know came from that lesson. But
Right.
I have, pick your head up. So it's almost like when you're down, you think about God, and he's the one that's like, hey man, keep your head up. Like, I'm with you, even when you feel alone.
Yeah.
And I love the imagery there, because it says, but you, O Lord, are a shield for me.
Yeah.
The idea is, my understanding, a shield about me is the idea.
Yeah.
So of course, what does a shield do?
Yeah.
It protects, it
Protects you.
defends. And so God is a shield about us. He protects us. He defends us. That's the God that we serve. And so I think when I went through this lesson, this was the first main application. Let your first instinct always be but God, and always let prayer be your first move.
Yeah.
And so that's the words you need to remember. Anytime you're struggling, no matter how great the trial may seem, remember, but God, and approach his throne in prayer.
Mhm.
That's what David
Yeah.
did. He feels like he's having trials. And so regarding prayer, so many people have this idea, like, obviously we understand it's powerful, but sometimes we sort of talk in a way like it's not.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we've heard this phrase, someone's struggling, we say, I'm praying for you. And then we'll say, it's the least I can do. But that's never been true.
No,
In fact, James, the half brother of Jesus, what did he say? The effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man
Avails a little.
avails
No,
much.
avails
That's
much.
it, yeah.
Well, verse 4 too, like you said, his first instinct is to pray. I cried to the Lord with my voice. He heard me from his holy hill. Like, this is the king of the universe you're talking to. Like, imagine if you were going through something and I was like, Brandon, like, least I can do is call the president. You'd be like, okay, that's the least you can do. What else can you do?
Yeah.
Like, that's what prayer is, you know?
Absolutely. And that's a great point to think about. It just shows the fact, I think, God wants to hear from us.
Yeah.
And that's something we often take for granted. You know, one of my favorite verses in the Old Testament is Amos 3:3. Can two walk together except they be agreed? And the reason I find it so significant is because you literally have the children of Israel. And the point is, God wants to walk with them.
Yeah.
God wants that relationship, but they won't walk with him. They won't meet him on his terms.
Yeah.
And so here David is, his trust, and then ultimately you have his triumph. And so from his trials to his trust in God, and because of that trust, you can have triumph over fear. And so verses 5-8, I lay down and slept. I awoke, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me. And then he continues in verses 7 and 8.
I have, in verse 5, I lay down and slept, peace in chaos. I have something as simple as making it through the night. He gives him thanks. You know, I awoke, for the Lord sustained me. So it's like sometimes when you're in the midst of something anxious, it's like just making it through the night. It seems like I've got people dealing with stuff in my family right now. Like they're having a hard time even sleeping through the night, you know?
Right.
It's funny too. You made the point about Amos 3:3 about walking together with God. I heard somebody say a few things. The first thing that they said is they said that your children, basically as a parent, like your children want you, you will have as strong a relationship with them as you want to, because your kids like they're the only people in your life that just want to be around you all the time.
Right.
Like that's how we should be with God, you know?
Absolutely.
And then I also heard someone else say, having little kids is like a lesson in theology. Like James and I have kids. Like it is a little lesson in theology because you're like the father and you're just trying to take care of them and do what's best for them. And half the time it feels like they're just trying to do everything they can to hurt themselves. You're like, what are you doing? Like I'm giving you this instruction for a reason. And then like, I know my wife and I will have these conversations. We're like, isn't it crazy? All we're trying to do for these kids is this. And they just want to do this. And then we'll like both pause and we'll be like, so this is like it's like a little lesson in theology, right? Because God says in his word, I want you to ask me for things. I want you to rely on me. Here are instructions I'm giving you to protect you. And we're like, I think I want to stick a knife in the electrical outlet spiritually. Like, like don't do that. But I think I want to do it.
Yeah.
You know? God's like, don't do this. And you're like, I don't think he's looking. Electrical outlet. Like that's what we do spiritually sometimes. God says things and we don't. And David in his worst is like, I thought about all this. I seemed like things were hopeless. And then I prayed. And then you said verses, what'd you say? 5-8 is his triumph.
His triumph. Yep.
So I lay down and slept. I awoke. The Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who've set themselves all around. Verse 7, arise, O Lord. Save me, O Lord. Oh my God, for you have struck all my enemies on the cheekbone. You have broken the teeth of the ungodly. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing is on your people. I see in this psalm something that I don't know if we're going to discuss Psalm 73. Is that one of these?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get to that later. But notice what this psalm, like the sort of, he's in despair. He cries to God. He remembers that God is protecting him. And then he remembers what is the ultimate outcome of the ungodly. Like that's what we're going to see later in Psalm 73, which is you feel like you're in despair because you feel like everyone else around you is succeeding and you're not, and you're under attack. And then you remember, wait a minute, what a man sows, he's going to reap. God is not going to allow the unrighteous to go unpunished. God is God of justice. If I just remember those things, I know what the end of them is going to be, and I know what the end of faithful people is going to be. So I don't think I've ever noticed in Psalm 3, but that's in a much shorter psalm. You know, this is 8 verses, and the other one's a lot longer, you know.
Right.
But that's really cool. All right, go ahead, Cole.
Something that I noticed, I always go back to Isaiah. It's my favorite book, and I just love it so much. And it reminded me of Isaiah 24. At verse 16, you know, Isaiah 1:1, he's seeing this vision of this impending doom and what's going to happen and all this destruction. At verse 16, he said he heard the song from the end of the earth, glory to the righteous. But Isaiah says, I am ruined. ruined. Woe to me, the treacherous dealer has dealt treacherously. Indeed, the treacherous dealers have dealt very treacherously. But if you skip down to chapter 25 at verse 1, just a few more verses down, Isaiah realizes something. O Lord, you are my God. I will exalt you. I will praise your name, for you have done wonderful things. Your counsels of old are faithfulness and truth. And just like David in Psalm 3, he begins thinking about how bad things are and how evil it seems like the world is. But then he goes, but wait a second. I've got a God in heaven that I can plead to, I can pray to. And just like David, he heard me from his holy hill. And I think there's something so beautiful about that avenue that we have with, like you said, the creator of the universe.
Yeah. You know, you see these themes. I hadn't thought about Isaiah that way, but you've got David who feels this way. You've got Isaiah that feels this way. And we've done an episode in previous seasons, I think, on Habakkuk. He feels this way.
Yeah.
He says, God, our people are so wicked. We don't talk about that in this lesson, right? Do we talk about Habakkuk?
I reference him, but we don't go into it much.
Well, when Brandon references it later, you know what we're talking about. In the book of Habakkuk, he says, our people, this is after captivity. No, before captivity. Yeah. Our people are so wicked, Lord. Why aren't you punishing us? And God says, oh, I am, Habakkuk. I'm bringing Babylon. He's like, whoa, wait a minute. They're too wicked. You can't bring Babylon. And he says, no, I'm going to bring them to punish wickedness. Then later, they're going to be punished. And your people are going to go into captivity. It's going to be a bad time for you. And in the midst of this chaos, he has peace. In chapter 3, he basically just praises God. So it's like this same idea. I see wickedness being, triumphing. And then God says, hey, I'm going to take care of it. In that action, God spoke directly to him. In these other ones, he just realizes, hey, wait a minute. I know how God acts. And so then you have this deliverance. So it's like you feel Psalm 3, Psalm 73, Isaiah, and I'm sure there's many more examples. Somebody's in an anxious situation. They remember, wait a minute, this is what my God does. He's a shield. He protects me. He lifts up my head. And then they're like, I'm going to be okay. So it's like, no matter what you're in, if you just remember God and remember that he's with you, it'll help you in these. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the second one of 5. All right. So what's the second Psalm that you dealt with?
All right. We go straight from Psalm 3 to Psalm 4.
Okay.
And so
easy to find if you're already in Psalm 3.
That's it. Psalm 3, when it feels like everyone's against you.
Okay.
And Psalm 4 is the Psalm for when you can't sleep. And I will say personally, since I have done this lesson, I have likely thought more about this one than any of them.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of made a joke when I taught this at PTP. I was like, look, I love to sleep. It's like, I don't know about all of you, and I'm sure I'm not just speaking for myself, but I love to sleep. And then I made the point, the bad thing, though, is anxiety also seems to love the nighttime.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly what the reason is for that. Mm-hmm. I made the point, maybe it's because during the day, it's you versus your friends, you versus your family, you versus work, you versus school, whatever it may be.
You're like so busy
exactly
that you don't have time to think about it.
Yeah. Not that you don't have troubles, but then at night, it's you versus a million thoughts.
Yeah.
And so you have some people who they're worried, they're anxious all throughout the day about answering text, answering phone calls, being around a certain person or being around people in general. And then at night, it's like, it's finally time to rest, right? But nope. Now it's time to go over everything you just went through. You have to examine, you have to ruminate, and now you have to get ready for the next day. And anxiety, for some people, if they're not careful, it just becomes a way of life.
Yeah. So, and I know for me too, I know sometimes when I go to bed, it's funny, I'm normally so exhausted at the end of the day that I fall asleep pretty quickly. But then for me, it's almost like when I wake up, like if I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, oh man. Because as soon as I'm awake, it's like the computer's on and it's like running it, all the things I have to do that day. And I know for some people, I've talked to them, it's like you said, it's the opposite. Like they're busy all throughout the day. And then especially like, if you're a parent, your kids go to bed, like you don't have any time to think about anything else. Your work, your kids, put your kids to bed, you lay down, and it should be the most peaceful time in the world because you're like, it's just time to relax. And then it's like, nope, and then your anxiety comes up and it's like, hey, let's relive every conversation you had today. Or like, hey, let's think about the 500 things you need to do and or all the bills paid and all these things. And sometimes it's hard, people lay there for an hour and they can't fall asleep.
Right.
All right. So Psalm 4.
So Psalm 4, some people have even titled this the evening prayer, Some people have titled Psalm 3 the morning prayer and Psalm 4 the evening prayer, and mainly because of verse 8. And so I won't be giving an outline for every chapter, but I also did write this in my Bible.
Yeah, go ahead.
You have the counsel from David that he gives to his enemies, verses 1 through 5. And then you have the contrast in verses 6 and 7 between the sources of his joy and theirs. And then finally, as a result of doing those things and given all of God's wonderful mercies, David finds great comfort. And so you have counsel, comfort, or counsel, contrast, comfort. And this is where he says in verse 8, I will both lie down in peace and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety.
Wow.
And so what's the takeaway? And I think it's this. This is David's way of telling us modern people that God has the night shift. Everything is okay. God has it. And so for people who watch this episode, or for people who were sitting in the audience when I preached this, I don't know everybody's background, but I know we all struggle. You know, it's been pointed out in life, you either just went through a trial, you're going through a trial, or you're about to.
Yeah.
Job said, Job 14:1, man that is born of woman is a few days and full of trouble.
Yep.
It's a biblical concept. But ultimately, you can have a peace in the Lord like no other. And so Philippians 4:7 talks about the peace which surpasses all understanding. And that's the comfort we have in Christ.
Cole, you want to read this psalm? You start in verse. So let Cole read it and then tell us that outline again. So which is the first section, and we can read through it too, just for someone that's listening. That way, we're not in any rush. At PTP, we're in a rush. They're like, you get 30 minutes. And we're like,
Right.
10. You want me 3 minutes a psalm? You know, like,
Right.
Good luck. But here we go, as long as we want, Brandon.
So verses 1 through 5, that's the counsel.
Okay, read verses 1 through 5.
1 through 5, counsel. Hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have relieved me in my distress. Have mercy on me. Hear my prayer. How long, O you sons of men, will you turn my glory to shame? How long will you love worthlessness and seek falsehood? But know that the Lord has set apart for himself him who is godly. The Lord will hear when I call to him. Be angry and do not sin. Meditate within your heart on your bed and be still. Offer the sacrifices of righteousness. Put your trust in the Lord.
I don't know if you skipped over this part, but I know in your lesson, when verse 4, meditate within your heart on your bed and be still. Remember what you said to count?
All right. Count your blessings.
Yeah, you said don't count sheep, count blessings. And I
Right.
wrote that in my Bible. So it's like when you're laying in bed at night and you have all this anxiety like pulsing through your brain and your veins, instead of like counting all the things you have to do, count about all the ways that God's been good to you, all the
Right.
things that he's done for you in that day. And that's a good thing. You know, they say comparison is the thief of joy, especially like with social media and stuff nowadays. Like, you know, you're laying in bed at night, if you're scrolling through your phone and all you're seeing is all these other people and how great their life is. And I heard someone once say, don't forget social media, like everyone's post is like their highlight reel, and you compare their highlight reel to like the worst part of your day or your average day. So it's like count the things. Comparison can also be the bringer of joy, depending on who you're comparing. So I'm like, if you're on social media, unfollow all the people you think are great, and you're like, go follow some really boring people, and then you'll be like, man, my life's awesome. You know, like it can be the thief of joy or it can be the bringer of joy. And with what Brandon said in his lesson, like don't count your sheep, count your blessings. If I lay down at night and I think of all the bad things that are going on, and I say, you know what, I need to stop that. I need to think about what are all the things God's done for me. Like right now I'm healthy. I have a house. I have air conditioning. A lot of people don't have air conditioning in the world, you know, like I have great kids, you know, I have a good job. Like you start thinking through those things and all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, maybe I don't have it as bad as I thought I did, you know? I said this in one of the other episodes. My dad taught me growing up. I don't remember what age it was. I was dealing with something and he made the analogy, if you could take everybody in the community and like stand around a swimming pool and you threw in all your biggest problems and they threw in theirs and you went in with a fishing pole and tried to basically just draw out a random one, like, would you want to trade your life with someone else? And I thought, I don't think I would, you know, at least nothing I've been through so far, you know? So anyway, that's just what I have written in my Bible. Don't count sheep, count blessings.
Right.
You know, that kind of reminds me, like you've got somebody like David who's able to experience anxieties and discomforts, and he's a king.
Yeah.
And like all throughout, you know, the Jewish history, they'll look back to that Davidic kingdom and they'll want that again. But David at the height of his empire even is still going through these struggles. And then you go to somebody like Paul who has nothing and he's able to write, you know, Philippians 4:6, be anxious for Nothing.
Yeah.
And you're wait, hold on. David, with all of this empire and all this dominion and all this reign and all this power, and it's like Solomon. Look at Solomon. It wasn't enough.
Wise man, but
then you go to Paul, who has nothing.
yeah.
You know, in perils of false brethren and
Yeah.
countrymen, he's beaten, he's shipwrecked. And he's like, but whatever thing I was weak in, I count, you know, Christ can make me strong in.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, Paul, how can you say
He called them
that?
these light afflictions.
Yes.
like
It's
you were
like
treading water in
light?
the ocean for like what, 3 days? I don't know how long.
Yeah.
How long did he say in 2 Corinthians? He talks about-
Shipwrecked a night and a day.
Yeah. So
And
he's
it's
treading water for
Yeah.
a night and a day. And he's like, that's light affliction. I'm like, buddy, you like almost died. You almost drowned.
Yeah, getting stoned almost to the point of death.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, it parallels this so nicely in that when you're walking with God, kind of like what you were talking about with Amos 3:3, whenever you have this walking alongside of Christ, there's really nothing that could ever come your way.
Yeah.
You know, David, whenever he was a young boy and he gets to encounter Goliath, and he does not ask about, well, how big is his sword? People tell him, but he's not asking for that
Yeah.
information, or how much does his armor weigh? No. He says, who is this
Yeah, he
uncircumcised
didn't
Philistine?
care. He didn't care who it is.
He is provoking the Lord of Israel,
Yeah.
and I'm going to stop it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
All right. So read the last. So we had 1 through 5, which was the
Counsel.
counsel. What was the next section? The comparison or the
Yeah.
contrast?
Verses 1 through 5, David gives counsel to his enemies.
Okay.
Then 6 and 7 is the contrast
All right.
between
6
the
to 7.
sources of his joy and theirs.
All right. Read 6 and 7.
There are many who say, who will show us any good? You have put gladness in my heart more than in the season that their grain and wine increased.
All right. And then verse 8, that is, what's that one?
That's the comfort.
The comfort. Read 8.
The comfort. I will both lie down in peace and sleep. For you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety.
Any last thoughts on that one?
I just think that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, man, it's sometimes easy to read that. It's hard to say that sometimes, especially whenever you're, you know, like we're talking about, people go through many difficult, hard things. You know, they lose friends, they lose parents, loved ones, and being able to still say this at the end of each night, that you can lie down in peace, that you can sleep because God has made you to dwell in safety. You know, that's sometimes hard to say.
Do you know,
Mhm.
Brandon, contextually, do you know if this psalm, do they know when, like I know in Psalm 3, it said this is when he's fleeing from Absalom trying to kill him. And I
Right.
know 4, it doesn't really say,
Right.
it doesn't have like any description like that. Have you heard or seen anybody say anything about when this was in his life?
I have heard it suggested that it's likely the same historical context
see
as
that.
Psalm 3.
I could see that.
So I don't know all the details.
like, I
behind
lie
that, but
down
that's
and-
what I've heard suggested.
I lie down in peace and sleep, make me dwell in safety. I doubt he says that from his castle.
Right. Yeah.
With his guard.
Yeah.
Like I wonder if he's like on the run in a cave.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's like, Lord, you're going to protect me.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It also, I think it shows the high and the lows you go
Mhm.
through sometimes in life. Because it's like, I was talking to somebody recently. It was you at lunch. I was saying like your true character comes out in times of trial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody can do the right thing when there's no opposition.
Yeah.
But like when it's times of trial and you know you're in the midst of a fight, that's when your character comes out. So it's like it's easy for David, I would think, to say, yeah, the Lord's my God when you're like this rich, famous, wealthy king, you know. Now there's other temptations in those times. But like here's the time when would be very easy for him to say, oh, the Lord's abandoned me. You know, like I'm I'm supposed to be the king. I'm God's anointed, and here I am fleeing in, you know, the wilderness, and my son's trying to chase me, and yet he still has faith in God, like in his valley, you know.
And I think application for that. I remember, you know, doing some research into Tolbert Fanning, which was one of the great restorers in the earlier years here in America. And something that was so interesting about him is that all of those guys were, of course, against enslavement, and they preached equality of people. But when it comes down to it, sometimes it could be hard in that society. Tolbert was in a city, and he saw a man getting sold into slavery by one of his brothers in Christ.
Mm.
And so he was there for a gospel meeting. What do you think the first thing he preached was?
Yeah.
He scratched his topic and preached over slavery.
Did he really?
And they told him, we don't want you to come back.
Good. I don't want to come
He
back.
was not allowed to continue that gospel meeting. But the point is that even in the face, he knew that he was going to face
Yeah.
discouragement.
That's
He
when that's
knew.
when your character shows.
And it's in those times, obviously, that you might not have to preach that sermon today, but whenever you know that something is an unpopular message and you know that what you're about to do is going to catch flack, but God has spoken and you can't be silent, are you going to speak? Because sometimes that's easier said than done, but you have a divine ordinance, a commandment from Paul to Timothy, preach the word.
I don't know, it's not in this Bible. It must be in one of my other Bible, my ESV or my New King James. But, I remember hearing a lesson once talking about, like, I don't remember, it was essentially about this topic, like when you are faced with a real decision to make your character. And I had wrote in the front of my Bible, weaker men cave.
Yeah.
Like, you can talk all you want about how strong you are spiritually, but like when you get put in a situation, it's almost like this is your proving ground.
Yes.
And like that was for his, he's in a place where they're not only like pro-slavery, but they're like selling people. And he says, scrap my sermon. We're going to talk about this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I just get like pumped up. Like, let's go, I want to kick through that wall there. I break my leg. But when you have these, and that's what you look at the prophets, man. That's why that you read the prophets, you study the prophets. And it's like you see what they did. Like we did lessons on Micaiah.
Yeah.
And he stands in front of 2 kings and 400 people. And he's like, you're going to go up and you're going to die because this is what the Lord said. And your prophets are all liars.
Yeah. And
like,
the king's like, I hate
that
him.
takes backbone, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. All right. We'll do that in another lesson later. Okay. What's the next psalm we should talk about, Brandon? Or you talked about in your lesson?
Psalm 13.
All right. Psalm 13.
This is the psalm when you feel forgotten by God. And so, in preparing for this lesson, of course, I went to various resources. And one application or theme, if you will, that we see often in Scripture is the idea that many people have felt this way, feeling forgotten and even feeling forgotten by God. And, this is what I said earlier. You referenced Habakkuk.
Yeah.
And so you have various people, Habakkuk and Habakkuk 1:2. He asked something that's very similar to what we're about to read here in Psalm 13, where he said, O Lord, how long shall I cry and thou wilt not hear? And so he's crying. And remember, this is a prophet of God crying on behalf of the righteous people in Judah. And he says, Lord, how long? It's like you're not listening to me. And then, of course, Job, I guess, is a classic example. A man who lost his family, his health, his wealth. He lost so much. And Job 17:15 records these words. Job said, where then is my hope? And so today, if we ever feel forgotten by God, it's not something that's unique.
Yeah.
It's something that some of God's finest have felt.
It's funny, when you started talking about people who feel like they've been forgotten, I started flipping to Habakkuk. You read Habakkuk 1:2, and like I have next to Habakkuk 1:4, I have in a box, common feeling in Scripture. And then I have Job 21:7, why do the wicked live and become old? Yes, mighty in power. So Job, which is the time of Abraham or Abraham's father Terah, based on age, we have that. I have Judges 6:13. If the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? I have David's son Solomon ask this same thing in Ecclesiastes 8. Asaph in Psalm 73. Jeremiah 12:1. Why do the wicked prosper? Malachi 3:15. So that's the end of the Old Testament. So from Genesis to from the first book in the Old Testament to the end, Malachi said, the wicked are raised up. They tempt God and go free. And then I have Revelation 6. How long, Lord, till you avenge? So Revelation 6, 9, and 10. So like you said, this theme, this is from Genesis to Revelation.
Yeah,
it will
absolutely.
it is a common theme. And the thing is also great, Job, Judges, David, Solomon, Asaph, Jeremiah, many of these are righteous men. Like in Revelation 6, there are people that died for their faith.
Yeah.
So like if you have this thought, if you ask this question that you feel forgotten by God, you're not in bad company, which is exactly what you said. Over and over in Scripture, righteous people felt like that.
Right.
Man.
Yeah, and I find this significant from that standpoint. You're not alone, but the thing we have to remember, again, is why is this recorded for us?
Yeah.
And so Romans 15:4, as we referenced at the beginning, the things written aforetime were written for our learning. And so I see David, great man of God, man after God's own heart, struggling. He feels forgotten. And so what I want to know is, what did David do?
Yeah.
And so he opens with Psalm 13:1, how long, O Lord? And this may not be original to me, but someone made the point, that's the heart cry of anybody stuck in anxiety, is it not?
How long?
How
is it gonna
long?
last?
And so that's the same words we just read with Habakkuk. And you notice David continues saying that. If you read verses 1 and 2, he says it 4 times. How long? And just those first 2 verses.
Yeah.
So,
will you forget me forever? And I have, probably from your lesson, never forgotten but feels forgotten. Like we have to remember, when we feel forgotten, I know you feel it and it's real and your feeling's valid, but it's not right.
Yeah.
You're not forgotten by God. And then you said verse 1, how long will you hide your face from me? Verse 2, how long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart daily? How long will my enemy, again, how long will my enemy be exalted over me? Why are the wicked prospering? Okay, all right, go ahead.
All right, David keeps asking, how long, how long, how long? And so the truth, I think, for most of us, as we mentioned, is we've wondered the same thing. And when we're struggling, we think, God, I'm looking for you, especially when it's something that's been going on for a while.
Yeah.
I'm looking for you. I'm praying to you. And so how long? Or maybe, God, when is it finally going to be my time? When is it going to be my time to shine? And I love the way David sets this up, because here you have David struggling. We've all felt it. David seems frustrated. We've all felt it. But here you have David who still approaches the throne of God. And that goes back to what we just referenced.
Yeah.
What did David do? In the midst of his struggling, how long, how long, how long? Verse number 3, here's what he says. Consider and hear me, O Lord my God, enlighten my eyes. And so amid this great discomfort and tribulation, David does what we all should do, and that's approach the throne of the God of all comfort, who comforts us in our tribulation, to borrow the language of the New Testament.
Yeah, oh Lord my God, enlighten my eyes. It's like Habakkuk 2, maybe. He basically says, I don't understand your ways. And he says, I'll stand on the rampart and watch to hear what. Like he's basically saying in here with David and Habakkuk, he's basically saying, like, help me understand this. Like, I feel like I'm being abandoned. Consider and hear, enlighten my eyes. And I hate to keep pulling these up. These are like yours, and maybe they're going to come in your notes later. But one thing you said in your lesson was, the tragedy is not unanswered prayers. But do you remember what you said?
It's unoffered prayers.
Unoffered prayers.
Wow.
Like unasked, unprayed prayers.
Yeah.
So you said, like, look, yeah, you're going to get the answer of no to a lot of prayers. But the biggest tragedy is you have this line of communication directly to the King of the universe, and we don't pick it up.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's like, I hate to use the analogy, but like, imagine if we had a phone right here, I could call the president and he would actually answer and be like excited to talk to me. Not like, what does this guy want again? You know?
Yeah.
Right.
But like, I could pick it up and I'm like dealing with something in my life and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna, why wouldn't you? Like, what's wrong with you? Is something wrong? Why wouldn't you pick up and call the creator of the universe?
Great point.
And he has unlimited power.
Yeah.
It's not like, well, my hands are tied.
Thanks for watching the Authentic Christian Podcast. If you want to watch more content like the Authentic Christian, different programs, other podcasts that you want to learn about the Bible, I'd recommend you download our app, the Gospel Broadcasting Network app. Just get on the App Store. You also can find it on Roku, iTunes, etc. Search Gospel Broadcasting Network, download the app, and you can see the show, The Authentic Christian, and many, many other shows, dozens of shows, other podcasts, other shows that walk you through verse by verse through different books of the Bible, or even just different topical shows. So I would recommend you download the Gospel Broadcasting Network app. Thanks for watching.
Wow, that's a really good point. And to bring it back,
Well, thank you, Cole.
Yeah, well, it was. I hadn't thought about that, but it kind of makes you think.
I like this guy.
I like this guy. In Habakkuk chapter 3, starting at verse 17, I think you see Habakkuk's response to all this. Like he sees God's power, and he says, though the fig tree may not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, though the labor of the olive may fail, and fields yield no food, though the flock may be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. So basically, everything has gone wrong in life. Yep. Everything is everybody's against me, like David. There's
no
nothing,
food, no money in my bank account,
nothing. But what does he say? Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in the God of my salvation. The Lord God is my strength. He will make my feet like deer's feet. He will make me to walk on my high hills. One day is coming, and God is going to be faithful to his promises. And if I don't get it all here on earth, then there's a heaven to gain.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a beautiful, beautiful depiction to have of God, to approach his throne just like David was willing to do and say, I don't have it all figured out. I don't know all the answers, but he does.
Right.
That was a great point too, Cole.
Thank you. That's a good guy.
I like that quote so much. Since I've heard that quote, whatever it was, I can't remember it now, but the greatest problem is not unanswered prayers, but unoffered prayers.
Yeah.
I wish that were original to me, but I love that quote.
Not much of what I say is original to me.
Right. The reason I think it's so significant, and as y'all alluded to, is because you have to remember God sees the full picture, and I only see a piece of a
Yeah.
puzzle.
Absolutely.
And so the illustration I've heard, and I love this illustration, is imagine a man standing up against a painting, and he's asked to describe the painting.
Mm.
But the problem is, with his face that close, he just can't accurately tell you what it is. And so if he sees blue, he might think it's an ocean. If he sees green, he might think it's a painting of a forest. But it's not until when that he can fully tell you what the painting is, until he steps back.
Yeah.
And so that's what it's like with God. You remember Paul prayed 3 times that his thorn in the flesh would be
Yeah.
removed. But ultimately the answer was,
No.
my grace is sufficient for thee.
Yeah.
And so God knows what is best. And so unanswered prayers is not the problem.
No.
The problem is when we stop approaching the throne of God.
Yes.
That's when things become dangerous. And that's
Absolutely.
not what David did.
Yeah. You're right.
And so I love verse number 5. He says, again, you might circle this, but I have trusted in your mercy. He goes on to say, I will sing to the Lord. And here's what David academically still knew. Maybe he's struggling, but David was still grounded because he hath dealt bountifully
Mm.
with me.
Wow.
Yeah, that's Habakkuk 3:17. Doesn't matter what happens, and you might be poor physically, but rich spiritually.
Yes.
Jesus said the poor of this world were chosen to be rich in faith.
That's right.
So even in this moment, and I don't know exactly the context, but I'm assuming most of these Psalms that he writes about being abandoned and forgotten, everybody's against him, is when he's on the run. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Right.
I doubt he feels like that in his palace in Jerusalem.
Right. Yeah. With this psalm, I've heard it suggested that the historical context, and I don't think we have any way of knowing this for sure, especially with this psalm, but I've heard it suggested is when he's on the run from Saul. So of
Wow.
course
Yeah,
you
that
think
makes
about
sense.
everything going on there and the
Yeah.
trials that came from that.
Yeah.
So this is one more quote I'll share.
Yeah.
I love this also. Satan trembles when he sees the weakest saint upon their knees.
Wow.
And so there's power in prayer, as we alluded to, but David knew that.
Yeah.
And so David struggling, yes, praying, absolutely.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I got little kids. When I hear that Satan trembles when he sees the weakest saint upon their knees. And I'm thinking Lion King. Sorry. It's another Disney. I've used this a couple of times, but like that scene, if you haven't seen The Lion King, you're missing out. But the elephant graveyard, right? You got little Simba and he's about to be eaten by 3 hyenas. And it's like, if it was me on my own against the forces of darkness, like I'd be pretty worthless, I think.
Yeah.
But like Simba's trying to roar, and then all of a sudden there's this like massive roar, and he's like shocked. And
Did I just do that?
yeah, and then behind him is his dad. It's like
Yeah.
Mufasa. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, the hyenas are not going to survive, right?
No.
Like that's what I think of. Satan, the hyenas tremble when they see, this little lion cub's dad show up, And you think about just throughout the Bible, you think about the interaction that the demons had whenever the demons met Jesus. They were like, "Oh, Holy One, like please don't torment us before the time." Yeah, I like that quote.
And it's kind of like, Jesus, whenever he's looking out at his city and he says, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou which stonest the prophets and killest thee which are sent unto thee." But he says this might be one of the saddest things that's said in the Bible, how often he would have gathered them.
Yeah.
Well, like a chicken does, like under
That's
her
right, a parent,
wings,
like a mother.
but ye would not.
Yeah.
And it shows that the whole time, all this is going on through the Old Testament, all these trials and afflictions, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, all these captivities, Jesus is saying, I was there the whole time.
I would have delivered
and
you.
I wanted to help
Didn't
you.
ask.
I was begging you. I sent you prophets. I tried to speak to you, but you wouldn't.
Yeah.
You wouldn't listen. And I wonder how often in our lives we get ourselves into a sticky situation.
Yep.
And Jesus is still sitting up there pleading with the Father, saying, "Look, I'm doing my best. They won't listen. Why are
Yeah.
they not listening to me?
Yeah.
They're still not listening." And we don't approach his throne.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like I've always thought, that the greatest warrior in the faith is the one that's always on his knees. That's how he fights his battle. He doesn't fight it with a sword in his hand. In the Old Testament, they were told over and over that God doesn't fight with the sword or with the bow. He's not a physical fighter. God is a spiritual being.
Yeah.
And those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. We're not fighting a physical battle like
Yeah.
Paul
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think that's such an interesting thing that Jesus would say to them.
Well, it made me think of Ephesians 6:18, talking about that battle. Of course, Ephesians 6, it gives the whole armor of God, but the whole armor of God is not complete without prayer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so immediately after listing the armor of God, the sword of the Spirit, the breastplate of righteousness, Ephesians 6:18 immediately says, praying always with all prayer
Mhm.
and supplication.
Wow.
So
It's like your final piece. You know, you're just about to get ready and go to war, and here's your last thing that you're carrying with you.
Yeah.
And it's prayer. And without it, you're not ready.
yeah. And I think what's interesting about this psalm also is, I guess everybody would agree when you're struggling, turn to God.
Yeah.
But the reality is, it seems obvious, but how many people don't do it?
Yeah.
So many people will maybe even blame God. Some people will turn to their friends, their family. They'll turn everywhere but God. But as you mentioned earlier, Philippians 4:6, it tells us to pray, but it says in everything.
Everything.
In everything, with prayer and supplications, let your requests be made known to God.
Yeah.
And so in every situation, I have that avenue of prayer.
That's great, man. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Philippians 4:16. That's great. Okay. Next Psalm.
Psalm 23.
All right. Psalm 23.
And I suspect
Most people have heard of this
people
one.
knew this was going to be on the list. One of the
Yes.
most famous Psalms. Of course, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And so this is a psalm that's brought so much comfort to so many people. It's probably read at more funerals than any other psalm.
Mhm.
Many people have it memorized, but I really think what's significant here is verse number 6.
Can we read it?
The whole psalm?
Yeah, let's read it.
Yeah.
We're not on PTP time here.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'll read it. And then Brandon, you can make your point about the verse 6.
All right.
The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Wow.
Hmm.
It's like every time you read this psalm, you sometimes will catch something new that you didn't before. I mean, it's just one of the most beautiful passages that you can read in Scripture. And I don't know, I focused on that last word there, forever.
Yeah.
We can never understand what that's like. We used to always say, the old gospel preachers would, that there was a heaven to gain and a hell to shun, but there's something eternal about the aspect of our being and our soul. Long after these bones perish, it lives forever. And for a Christian, man, that can take your anxiety away, because no matter what I'm dealing with, forever, I can be registered in heaven in the Lamb's Book of Life, standing beside Jesus and the Almighty, with the millions on high, singing the new song. And that's beautiful.
The thing that I think about when I read this is David, who was a man of valor, a man of war, dude could do some damage, like with his sling or a sword. I mean, Saul killed his thousands, David killed his 10,000s.
Yeah.
So I don't know why, but I mean, I'm 40. I feel like I'm a grown man. Like I've trained some stuff in weapons and tactics, but David, I wouldn't even want to walk on the battlefield with David, right?
No.
And yet David looks at himself as like a little tiny sheep, and God is his protector.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't know why this is what you learn in Scripture. I should look at myself like that. I should look at myself like, yeah, just because I'm a grown man compared to God, like I'm just this little sheep being led by God. I mean, Revelation 19 talks about, Jesus leads the armies of heaven, King of Kings, Lord of Lords on his, with his whole spiritual army. There's just so many things you get from these, and the Lord is his shepherd. All right, Brandon, take it away.
I don't remember if I gave the title or not, but if I
Okay.
did not, it's Psalm 23, when you're walking through the hard stuff.
Mm.
And so obviously that's what we're dealing with. And I like what you just mentioned. It's personal. The
Yeah.
Lord is my shepherd.
Yeah.
And so in my Bible, I underlined verse number 4 and I put a circle around the verse number. And so here you just see the struggle. I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And then I underlined verse number 6 and I circled that verse. I connected the two. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And so the point behind this is it's a matter of perspective. You're struggling, but remember, God always takes care. That's
Yeah.
what we've seen consistently, is it not? Through
Yeah.
all these Psalms.
Yeah.
Consider the bigger picture. That's what you have to do. And so one person pointed out here, notice how David does this, because he talks not just about the here and now, but as you mentioned, the hereafter. He says, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. That's the physical life, but it doesn't stop there.
No.
Yeah.
He says, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And so I love this application. There's the phrase we say, if it's not one thing, it's another.
Yeah.
And so the application somebody made, of course, was when we use that phrase, it's not one thing, it's another. Are we using that in the positive or negative sense?
Mostly negative.
Yeah,
Negative.
mostly negative.
And so the application they made is, what if we were more like the psalmist? And when we said, if it's not one thing, it's another, we were referring to the steadfast love of God.
God, yeah.
We were referring to not our bruises, but our blessings. And that would go so far to change our mindset. You know, Philippians, I think it's chapter 4 also,
Yeah.
talks about putting your mind on the right things. Colossians
Yeah.
chapter 3 says, set your mind on things above.
Yeah.
And so when you change your focus, not to the bruises, but the blessings of God, goodness and mercy, they'll follow me here and now, but God's love endures forever.
That's right.
It will change your whole perspective when you walk through the hard stuff.
You know, in verse 4, you talk about when you keeping it in perspective when you walk through the hard stuff. Verse 4, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And the reason he doesn't fear evil, even in a dangerous place, is because he's sticking close to the shepherd.
Right.
Like if he lagged behind and got away from the shepherd, the valley of the shadow of, I don't think he would be so confident he doesn't fear evil. You know, like
Right.
in my life, I don't fear, as long as I stick close to the Lord. I'm not afraid of anything spiritual. I mean, I'm not. Now the thing, if I get away from the shepherd, you know, it says take up your cross and follow him. If you don't follow him, if you want to go your own way, or you don't stick close to the shepherd, you don't have this confidence of not fearing evil, you know?
Right.
Yeah. I have logic. I don't know why I wrote that way. Logic says stick close with the shepherd. Wandering is dangerous.
You know, I had a little reference here at Isaiah 43:2 for the verse you just referenced.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll walk through the valley of the shadow of death. In Isaiah 43:2, God is speaking again to his children, to Israel. And he says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. Through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flames scorch you. And it's if you stay close to me, look, you've heard about all these horrible things, but you don't have to go through it. You don't have to go through all the difficulties of life.
Yeah.
If you stay near me, I'll protect you.
Yeah.
I'll guide you. I'll be to you as a shepherd.
Yeah, it's like, you know, when you read there about when you go through the fires, it won't touch you. And I just immediately think of like the literal account in Daniel 3.
Yeah. He wasn't lying. It wasn't a joke promise.
And, you know, I don't expect God to intervene miraculously. And it's funny because they really didn't either. They didn't know if they would. I mean, technically, let me just say what they said. You can make your own conclusions. They basically said, King Nebuchadnezzar, we don't have to answer you in this matter.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, our God can save us, but even if he doesn't, we're still not going to bow to your idol.
Yeah.
And they throw him in the furnace.
Yeah.
And Nebuchadnezzar's like, how many guys did we throw in? We threw 3 in, King. I see 4 walking, and one appears like one of the sons of the gods.
Yeah.
So, like, it's the idea of no matter what your scenario is, if you stick close to God, you know, that's what David did. That's why he can say, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and I fear no evil, for thou art with me.
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, he is with us, but he's only with us if we're with him.
That's right.
That's what Chronicles said.
Yeah.
If you basically don't forsake him, he won't forsake you. But if you forsake him, if you leave him, he'll cast you off forever, Chronicles says.
That's right. Yeah.
So we have to stick close to the shepherd. And that's our choice. We have that ability to decide whether we want to or not. So.
Yeah, I think in this New King James Bible that I have here, I went through like 2 or 3 different pens because I underlined every time the Bible said if.
Yeah.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was 1,537 in the New King James. I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
But it just reiterated in my mind that all these promises, they're contingent.
Yeah, the conditional.
They're
man.
always conditional. And so I know that some people don't like hearing that, but the promises apply to God's faithful. You know, not to
That's right.
unfaithful people. So,
God is faithful, and
Yes.
the decision's up to you.
exactly.
It's up to you.
Exactly.
It's your choice.
Absolutely.
I'm going to fact check you on that.
You can. I might be wrong. It's somewhere around there.
I'll call you in like 6 years. I'll be like, Cole, you were right. And I wasted a lot of time. No. Okay. All right. 5th Psalm. So for this episode, let's talk about one more in this episode, Brandon. What do we want to cap it off with this one?
All right, Psalm 27. Psalm 27. when fear creeps in. And this may be one of it's hard to say, I'm like each one, this is one of my favorites.
What's your favorite? Like
Yeah.
the one I'm studying right now.
So Psalm 27, this is a great one. It's a little bit of a longer psalm, but one commentary suggests this psalm be titled The Triumph of a Warrior's Faith. And so
Wow.
throughout this psalm, David talks about his enemies. He talks about waiting. He talks about confidence, all things that can be triggers for anxiety.
Yeah.
And so do we just want to read the first few verses there? Maybe through verse 6? Point out a few things.
Sure. Okay. I'll read verse 1 through 6. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked came against me to eat up my flesh, my enemies and foes, they stumbled and fell. Though an army may encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war may rise against me, in this I will be confident. One thing I have desired of the Lord, that I will seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. For in the time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret place of his tabernacle he shall hide me. He shall set me high upon a rock. And now my head shall be lifted up above my enemies all around me. Therefore I will offer sacrifices of joy in his tabernacle. I will sing, yes, I will sing praises to the Lord.
All right. I love David's unique strength, his boldness. Obviously, I won't read all that again, but verse 5, in the time of trouble, he shall hide me in his pavilion. Verse 6, my head shall be lifted up above my enemies. And so, there are so many lessons we can learn from David. We can learn lessons about repentance. We can, of course, learn lessons about, we could just go on and on, but
Yeah.
I guess one of the greatest lessons we learn about David and from David is courage.
Yeah.
He was a man of courage. And I don't think the reality is that David was fearless, but it was that David was faithful.
Yeah.
And so how could David have such great courage? Because David could have the Lord on his side. And because of that, he could say, whom shall I fear? Or what shall I fear? And if we have the same help that David had, we can say the same words that David said.
Yeah. I know that you talked about this in your lesson, and I have it written in my Bible. I have 1 Samuel 17.
Yeah.
Like you can't think of the story of David and his courage and not think of 1 Samuel 17.
Well, it's
right?
like when I taught that, it's like, what example comes to mind first when you think about David's courage? Because
Yes.
it's so obvious.
It is
Everybody
obvious.
knows, so
1 Samuel 17. Let's talk about this just because this passage gets me so amped up. All right. It's hard to sit and talk about this passage. But so 1 Samuel 17, what happens? Israel is terrified. And this psalm is about David is not going to fear, right? So Israel's terrified. Twice a day, Goliath came out and said, 1 Samuel 17:10. Man, I want to read this whole chapter. I'm going to look at verse 4. All right. It's just too much. Verse 8, Goliath, right? Then Goliath stood and cried out to the armies of Israel and said to them, why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and you the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves. Let him come down to me. If he's able to fight with me and kill me, we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us. And the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. Look, if you haven't seen Amazon Prime series on David, have you watched it?
I haven't, but I've seen this depiction in like a clip of what this looked like.
Have you seen it?
I have not.
There's some stuff in it that you can argue about whether they played a little bit too much off of like these certain Jewish traditions, or like the Genesis 6, like the angels having sex with women, then to fill them. They play a lot off that for the origin of the giants. No matter what your position is on that, you need to go watch this series, because now I will say this. If you look at 1 Samuel 16, in a lot of places they depict David as like a 12-year-old, right? David was not a 12-year-old.
No.
Look at 1 Samuel 16 and verse 18. Then one of the servants answered and said, this is to Saul, look, I have seen a son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite, who is skillful in playing, a mighty man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, and a handsome person. The Lord is with him. And you remember when he fights, when he's basically telling them why he can fight Goliath, he says, look, when I was keeping my father's sheep and a lion or a bear came against him, I grab him. Look at verse 34. Like, it's not, when you think of him killing a lion or a bear, you think, oh, he threw a sling stone, right? And he hit this. Look at verse 34. David said to Saul, your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went after it and struck it and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard.
Yeah, you can almost see him like grabbing a lion.
I caught it by its beard, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them.
Wow.
Seeing has defied the armies of the living God. And David said, the Lord that delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. He's saying, look, you're all afraid of this guy. And I killed a lion and a bear, which I can just tell you from not being involved in any hand-to-hand combat in my life. If you said, Aaron, you can fight this really big guy with a weapon, or you can fight a lion or a bear, I would be like, I think I pick the guy with a weapon. Like,
Yeah.
a lion or a bear. I mean, if you don't know anything about animals, a lion and a bear, like, I don't like house cats, man. Like,
Yeah.
if someone has a house cat, I'm like, can I trust it? Is it going to stalk
it's
me
gonna attack
in the
me.
night? Yeah. Like, cats are athletic, and you take a 600-pound or however,
Yeah.
large lions are. So like David, man, he has so much courage.
And can we make a point about
Please.
the rest of the people here? Look at 1 Samuel chapter 17 at verse 11. And this is right after Goliath gets done speaking. It said, when Saul and underline all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were not that scared at all, and it was like not a big deal.
They were dismayed and greatly afraid.
Greatly afraid.
And this is Saul. Saul has
Yes.
killed his thousands.
Yes.
Saul was a warrior.
yeah.
And all these other Israelites were mighty men of valor. They were warriors. I mean, you read later about David's mighty men. Joab, wasn't Joab like, I can always get Joab and
Joab was his
Joab's
general.
Dave,
Yeah,
David's
David's
general.
general,
But
yeah.
wasn't he already a part of the army before David? Like, I think David leapfrogged him.
I
Like,
think he
I don't
was already
remember
a
all
man
the
of
details,
valor, if I'm not
but
mistaken.
in the whole nation of Israel, there were a lot of
Oh,
mighty men
yeah.
of valor that existed,
Yeah.
and they were all afraid except for David.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about David is the reason I would say why he wasn't. If you go to verse 45, he says, you come to me with a sword, a spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied.
Yes, yes. And Brandon, I've heard you say this in this lesson, or I've heard you say it at least a time or two, and I'll tip you off to it and you can finish it. Everyone else thought that Goliath was what?
Too big to hit.
Brandon said in a lesson, everyone else thought that Goliath was too big to hit or to kill. And what did David think?
He thought he was too big to miss.
He was too big to miss.
Wow.
It's like you can't hit the broadside of a barn. And David thought his God was too big for him to miss.
That's right.
Like, it says, okay, before I go, let's go to verse 40. All right, if you have these thoughts, don't let your thoughts get away from you, because we can talk about this as long as we want. Look at verse 40. Then he took his staff in his hands, and he chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook. And he put them in a shepherd's bag in a pouch, which he had, and his sling was in his hand. All right. In Judges 2016, it talked about these people who could hit a hair's breadth with their sling, right? 600 left-handed men, which, I'm a left-handed writer at least. So, but there were these men who were absolutely super precise because it was a weapon they practiced with all the time. Now, let me just ask this. Does David strike you as the kind of guy that thinks he's going to miss?
I would say no.
I
Not
don't
the
think
way he's
so.
acting.
The way he's acting, he's like, I'll strike this guy. He
Yeah.
has so much confidence in God. Now,
Mhm.
I don't know all the details, but go to 2 Samuel 21. All right. I think it's 2 Samuel 21. I'll know very quickly because I'll have notes there or not. Yeah, it's right. 2 Samuel 21. Okay. Now, I want to start in verse 18. No, verse 15. All right. So the subtitle, not inspired, but accurate, says Philistine giants destroyed. All right. So Goliath was a Philistine, and there were other giants. He wasn't the only one. Look at 2 Samuel 21:15. When the Philistines were at war again with Israel, David and his servants went with him and went down and fought against the Philistines, and David grew faint. Then Ishbi-benob, if you're looking for a kid's name, right? Then Ishbi-benob, who was one of the sons of the giant. All right, look at verse 22. These 4 were born to the giant in Gath. Goliath was from where?
Gath.
Goliath of Gath.
Yeah.
So these 4 that are being described, we're just talking about the first one. They were born to the giant in Gath. All right. Okay. Now go back to verse 16. Ishbi-benob, who was one of the sons of the giant from Gath, verse 22, assuming Goliath, the weight of whose bronze spear was 300 shekels, who was bearing a new sword, thought he could kill David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, came to his aid and struck the Philistine and killed him. Then the men of David swore to him, saying, you shall go out no more with us to battle, lest you quench the lamp of Israel. I don't know. Does that mean that they're saying, hey, David, you're getting a little old? I don't know. Verse 18. Now it happened afterward, there was again a battle with the Philistines at Gob. Then Sibbecai the Hushathite killed Saph, who was one of the sons of the giant. Verse 22, the giant from Gath, Goliath. And again there was war at Gob with the Philistines, where Elhanan, the son of Jereth-Oregim, the Bethlehemite, killed, and some translations say the brother of, but that's not in the Hebrew, right? And it says the brother of Goliath the Gittite. Now, maybe Goliath the Gittite is maybe the son of Goliath from Gath. So I think what they're saying, that's why they added that, is that the text says killed Goliath the Gittite. So they thought, okay, well, Goliath the Goliath, like
from
the man is
Gath.
from
He'd be
Gath.
Goliath of Gath.
So Goliath the Gittite is probably Goliath's son.
Yeah.
Who is living in, he's a Gittite. So the brother of Goliath. So you have another one of these sons of the Goliath, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. Verse 20, yet again there was war at Gath, where there was a man of great stature who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number. I don't know if that means he had like some advantage or he was a mutant or what. But he also was born to the giant. So when he defied Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimei, David's brother, killed him. Verse 22, these 4 were born to the giant in Gath, Goliath, I think likely. Or else you think you would, if it's implied you know who the giant in Gath is.
Yeah, you've already read 1 Samuel, you understand.
Yeah, and fell by the hand of David and the hand of his servants. So what you have is you have David, what you have in 2 Samuel is the idea that Goliath had 4 sons. Now, if you go back to 1 Samuel 17, I can't prove this, and I haven't ever researched to see if there's any Jewish history behind this, but David takes 5 smooth stones from the brook. I don't know if this is why David does it, but David doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's going to miss.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if David looks across the battle line and sees Goliath defying the armies of the Lord, and right behind him on the front of the battle lines is there 4 of his sons, who are also giants.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's speculation a little bit. Maybe David just said like, hey, my pouch is full. I don't know. Why would he? But it seems to me it's very possible. And I really should research this and see if there's any, like, I guess it'd still be tradition. It wouldn't be inspired if Josephus or the Jewish writers wrote about it. But he takes 5 smooth stones. And I don't know. I get the idea David doesn't think he's going to miss.
Yeah.
He says,
like if they step up, I'm ready.
I'm going to smite this Philistine, and when his 4 sons come running out after their dad, I'm going to smite them all too. Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's speculation.
You can definitely tell in this account that he has righteous indignation.
Yeah.
Like
David
this has upset him.
And you see, that's why, okay, I'll go back to, you should go watch that Amazon series. It's called House of David. I think it's House of David. Did you watch it? Was
It's
it cool?
called House of David, yeah.
I think it's cool. Yeah, like Samuel's great, man. Samuel, the actor that plays Samuel, is the guy from Avatar, like the muscly, like general from Avatar. Yeah, yeah, with scar on his face. But the thing about it is, you watch it. I'm not saying I'll agree 100% with everything in it, but when you get to the scene where David fights Goliath, I think David was probably, of course, I don't know. I assume a man of war is jacked, but that doesn't mean back then they were. But I assume David was maybe a little bit more mature. But when you look at the way Goliath defies Israel and the way that it paints it, I mean, I could see Goliath looking like that. I don't know if I think David looked like that, but I could see Goliath looking like that. But what David does is David walks and he's like, what are you all doing? Like, why are you afraid to fight this guy?
Yeah,
you know? Yeah. And, you should go watch that. I think it pretty, for me, at least it helps me visualize what Goliath would have looked like, you know? And so, yeah, like the courage David has, he absolutely is just, he's ready to go. Man, he's ready to brawl. All right, what are your thoughts? I sort of hijacked it, but so what are your closing thoughts about David? It doesn't have to be closing, but like your thoughts about David, some other things about this from this psalm where the courage David has.
I think about I'll take a little bit of a detour here.
Go right ahead, man.
With 1 Samuel 17, the question: how did David have so much courage when everyone else was stricken with fear? And the reason I like this is because you could apply these same 3 principles to anxiety.
Great.
How do I overcome anxiety? Number 1, how did David have so much courage when everybody else was stricken with fear? He drew on God's past faithfulness.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned, 1 Samuel 17, 34 through 37 following, he talks about his past, how the Lord delivered him from the paw of the lion, the paw of the bear, and he says, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine.
Mhm.
And so to overcome God's past faithfulness, or let me rephrase that,
Yeah.
to overcome your anxiety, draw on God's past faithfulness.
Yeah.
That's a good
Now,
point.
that could mean different things. That could mean exactly what we're doing right now and going to the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
It could mean relying on David, seeing what he did and using that to strengthen us. It could be examine our own personal lives. If I've made it through then, I'll make it through this thing.
Yeah.
I had an instructor at school. He would say, why are you worried about the test? You passed the last one.
Yeah.
Now, whether I did or not, that's a different story. But the reality is, the point is, you made it this far.
Yeah.
You'll continue to make it. Number 2, how did David have such courage when everyone else was stricken with fear? He did not let pressure from others stop him.
Yeah.
So think about that regarding anxiety. So much of what we worry about, our fears, have to do with what other people think.
Yeah.
I had a friend recently, I was talking to him about just some struggles I was going through, and he said, you care too much about what people think.
Hey, man.
And that's it. That's
Yeah.
absolutely it.
You're
And
right.
so-
Because it's like that is, you talk about peer pressure. I mean, the Micaiah lesson comes to mind. David comes to mind. The whole nation. And this is the army.
Right.
And they're all afraid of this guy. And David has so much faith in God, he does not care what anybody else thinks.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, he stands up not just to them, but to his family
Yeah.
and King Saul.
Yeah. His brother.
Yeah.
Which brother is it? His oldest brother. I can't think of it.
It's not Eliab, is it?
Yeah, I think it is Eliab, where he's like, you just came to the battle to see the
Right.
fighting, And he's
Yeah.
like, oh, what did I didn't? And in the movie or in the House of David, he's like, I didn't. What am I? Why, I'm just saying, why don't you fight this guy?
Right.
You guys are all cowards,
And I think, I wonder if David standing up to his brothers and King Saul wasn't a greater exhibition of courage than standing up to Goliath.
Yeah,
Because sometimes it's standing up to those to whom we are closest.
That's
Yeah.
hard.
That's the hardest.
Yeah,
Maybe standing up to the world, that's easy because in my circles
Yeah.
and the way I've grown up, people expect me to do that.
yeah,
But what about when it's my family?
yeah,
What about when it's people in the church who are in the wrong?
yeah. When you're more worried about severing a relationship,
Yeah.
Right.
and it's like, are we going to worry more about a human relationship or being faithful and righteous to God, like doing the righteous thing, the right thing God wants us to do?
Right.
Yeah, that
And-
should always trump everything else,
Yeah. And then the third one I had here, how did David have so much courage? He saw God, not Goliath.
Yeah.
And so as we mentioned, everyone was focused on his size. They talked about his strength, his armor, his words. But if you look throughout this context, I wish I had the verses marked out here, but someone pointed out that David, if you read it out and you make the notes, David refers to God 9 times in this passage,
Mhm.
compared only to 2 times for Goliath.
Wow.
Now, making that simple, if our God thoughts, if you will, outweighed our Goliath thoughts 4-1,
Yeah,
that would change everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
No, Romans 8:32, what shall we say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? That mindset changes everything.
that's right, man.
And how do you overcome anxiety? See God and not Goliath, if you will.
That's awesome, Brandon. All right, let's end on that thought. That was such a great thought.
Yeah.
Brandon, man, thanks for being with us. This is cool.
Sir,
We're going to film a second part later in the season we'll release, and I'm really excited for that one. This was great for me. I love studying the Psalms. Thanks for being here.
Mhm. Thank you. I know it's, like I say, since I've done this lesson, it's helped me a lot.
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you for hanging out with us on this episode of the Authentic Christian Podcast. I'm Aaron. This is Cole. This is Brandon Blackwell. Look him up on YouTube. Watch some of his sermons. I hesitate to say this in front of him because he's young, but I really like Brandon. We went to church together at South Haven, and I remember when you were in the youth group, you started speaking once or twice, and I was like, "That I like his preaching." And then you went to the preaching school, Memphis School of Preaching, and you came out, and I said, "Man, I really like it." So Brandon, go check out his material on Spotify. You can search "Polishing the Pulpit." You can search his name, "Polishing the Pulpit." Find lessons that Brandon did at PTP and other places. Brandon, thanks for being with us.
thank you.
I'm Aaron. This is Cole. This is Brandon. We'll see you back on the next episode of the Authentic Christian Podcast. We hope you have a great day.
Thanks for watching the Authentic Christian Podcast. If you want to watch more content like the Authentic Christian, different programs, other podcasts that you want to learn about the Bible, I'd recommend you download our app, the Gospel Broadcasting Network app. Just get on the App Store. You also can find it on Roku, iTunes, etc. Search Gospel Broadcasting Network, download the app, and you can see the show, The Authentic Christian, and many, many other shows, dozens of shows, other podcasts, other shows that walk you through verse by verse through different books of the Bible, or even just different topical shows. So I would recommend you download the Gospel Broadcasting Network app. Thanks for watching.